Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to INSS English Podcast. My name is Adi Kantor. 12 murdered children, more than 30 injured, 6 of them in severe condition. These are the horrifying numbers and the most shocking and tragic massacre in the Israeli society since October 7. This time, the Shiite terror struck the Druze village of Majdal Shams. On Saturday, July 27th, Hezbollah fired a Falk 1 missile manufactured in Iran, carrying a warhead of more than 50 kilograms. This missile hit and killed innocent children between the ages of 10 to 16 while playing during the afternoon hours in a local soccer field. Israel now mourns the massacre of the 12 children, citizens of the State of Israel, and the Israeli defense system is now working on the response. What is a proper response to such an attack? And is there a scenario of a severe Israeli response that will still keep Israel under the threshold of a total war? What are the current scenarios vis-a-vis Hezbollah and the state of Lebanon? And what is the U.S. position regarding the scale and dimensions of the planned Israeli response? And what should Israel do in an event of a further escalation after Hezbollah responds back? In order to discuss these burning questions in depth, with me today are two INSS experts on these fields. First is Orna Mizrahi, former Deputy National Security Advisor for Foreign Policy. She led strategic planning on regional and international policy on behalf of the National Security Council for the Prime Minister and the Israeli Cabinet. Today with me also is Professor Chuck Freilich, who served for over 20 years in Israel's national security establishment as a senior analyst and finally as a Deputy National Security Advisor. A warm welcome to the both of you, Orna and Chuck. Thank you so much for joining me today. Orna, let us start with you regarding the northern Israeli border. Maybe you can share with us, what was the background of Hezbollah's attack last Saturday?
Okay, hello everybody. Let me remind you that we are in the midst of ongoing war of attrition that we have for almost 10 months now between the IDF and the Hezbollah. And every day we have something like from 5 to 10, even more attacks coming from Lebanon, from Hezbollah on Israelis' targets. Some of them are civilians and some of them are military. And it was quite expected that it would happen someday. And we were very concerned about that it wouldn't happen. You know, we have our defense systems, and most of these attacks were prevented. But sometimes it's not total, and sometimes it happens. Now, I suppose it was a mistake of Hezbollah. Maybe they wanted to target something else. They claimed that they wanted to target a military base. I'm not sure about that. Anyway, the rocket was launched and fell on this soccer field, and we have this tragedy of killing so many children. What I wanted to emphasize is two things. First, that we are sure that it was Hezbollah because we have a lot of evidence about it. The IDF spokesman was talking about it, that it was an Iranian missile. We have evidence that it was Iranian missiles from the remains of the rocket. And we know what kind it was. It was a very heavy rocket of 50 kilograms of explosives. And this is why it caused this enormous tragedy and disaster. And the second thing that I wanted to emphasize was about we are talking about this war of attrition that we have for more than 10 months. Everybody must remember that it was initiated by Hezbollah and not by anyone else. And Israel didn't want this war. And they initiated this war because, as you know, was support for the Palestinians the day after the 7th of October. And now we are in the midst of such a war. when the Hezbollah acknowledged that the tragedy is so big, they immediately denied and said that it was a total denial, saying they have nothing to do with this attack, and blamed Israel, actually, that maybe it is the Israeli Iron Dome that caused this event, but we know that Iron Dome couldn't cause such a disaster. So, and we have a lot of experience about it. So this is the background about what was happening.
What are the reactions in Lebanon in the past 48 hours? Terror organization Hezbollah, and there's the state of Lebanon. What are the voices that you're hearing from them?
You know, it's so frustrating because they know that Hezbollah is behind it, and they know that Hezbollah is dragging them to maybe to a full-scale war that they don't want, they are not interested in, but they still adopt the Hezbollah's version. And both the government and even the leadership of the Druze community in Lebanon, they all behind Hezbollah, and of course they're against killing children and civilians, and want and ask Israel to stop its attacks, but they are all backing Hezbollah. There is a difference between what the Druze leadership is talking about and what the Druze community is talking about, and also other communities in Lebanon. They are all against what Hezbollah is doing because they are so much concerned about the fact that Hezbollah is dragging them to another war that is going to cause lots of damage and destroy all of Lebanon. And you know that in Israel there is a huge debate about the fact that Lebanon is Hezbollah, Hezbollah is Lebanon. Some say so that in a war maybe Israel will have to attack Lebanese infrastructure, because you cannot make a difference between the Hezbollah's infrastructures and the others. So it's going to ruin Lebanon. So they know it, but they fear from Hezbollah and its reaction, because they know that everybody that is coming against Hezbollah going to find himself killed in the other next weeks. So, and we have a lot of examples for that. So they back Hezbollah for what is doing.
Just a minute, just a quick question. Backing Hezbollah and at the same time fearing from them.
Yeah. They are backing them. The leadership is backing them, and the leadership in both all the sects, and especially the non-Shia sects, the Sunnis, the Druze, and the Christians. They are all fear from this war and don't want it. I think also part of the Shiite communities understand the devastation that it's going to cause, and then don't want to be in that scenario. Mm-hmm. So this is about the possibility of war. A second thing to talk about is the trial to deliver messages mostly through the Americans and other Europeans to Israel, to ask them not to retaliate and not to open a wide-scale war. And we have some evidence about that. There were talks with the mediator, the American mediator Amos Hochstein, and the others, and they met some UN delegates in Lebanon, the head of UNIFIL forces, and they try to convince them to do something to stop or prevent Israel from a wide-scale retaliation.
Now let us move back to the Israeli side now, discussing the scenarios. What are the scenarios that you see from Israeli eyes now, what is laid before the state of Israel now with regarding a harsh reaction, a rough reaction? Is it indeed possible to respond roughly and severely and still remain under the threshold of war? Is it possible in your eyes?
I think it's possible, and it depends on what kind of reaction the IDF is going to deliver, to launch, and what is going to be the reaction of Hezbollah. And what is the interest of both sides. According to what I understand, both sides doesn't want, at least not now, not in these days, to have a full-scale war. So it's one thing to remember that maybe can, calm down a little bit the height of the flames. Anyways, I think that retaliation is needed, and the Israeli cabinet has already decided that there is going to be a reaction, a retaliation from the side of the IDF.
The question is only the timing.
Yeah, exactly. And what is the, the operational plan about that? I hope it will be something new, different, and with very less, collateral damage. So we have actually the cabinet was discussing two main options. The first one is to retaliate by a different but limited military action that the Hezbollah can contain, and to go back to the same, scenario of this war of attrition that I don't know when it's going to end. It depends on what is going on with the Gaza war. And the second alternative was to decide that enough is enough, and we are going to have to a more wide-scale operation, and take the risk that we are going to have a full-scale war. And the problem is that nowadays, the war with Lebanon is not going to be just one front war. It's going to be a multi-front war, because we know of this strategy, the new strategy shaped by Iran of having multi-front war, that they understand that Israel is strong, and if you want to defeat Israel, they think that the best way to do it is by having attacks from all over Israel, by opening multi-fronts.
Ring of fire.
As we see now, but it's going to be more, in a more high-scale level. And they also, then another thing is to target the home front. It's to have this multi-front and target the home front. This is the great strategy that they have in their minds, shaped by the Iranian, Soleimani, together with Nasrallah. And this is what they're doing now. This is why the Hezbollah decided to open this second front on the north, although they didn't like the timing of the attack of Hamas on the 7th of October, but they decided to join. And we have to take into account that if we have a full-scale war, it's going to be a multi-front war, and maybe even a regional war. The Iranians are threatening at least that they will join such a war if Israel attacks severely Hezbollah and Lebanon.
We heard the declaration a day, I think it was yesterday or two days ago, regarding warning Israel from an adventure in Lebanon, Iranian declaration.
Yeah, the Iranians, of course, backed the Hezbollah. They say that this tragedy of killing so many children is a spectacle led by Israel, etc. Such, I don't know. Never mind. So I was talking about these two options. One is the retaliation that will be contained, and the other one is going to a full-scale war. And as long as I understand what the cabinet has decided, because it's secret till now, and I understand that they are going to something like more limited operation, let's say, by that. But I suppose what they mean to do is that it will be more painful and than what we have witnessed until now.
Orna, last question. How responsive do you think Nasrallah is? Because until now, it was more an eye for an eye. Israel attacks, Hezbollah attacks back, remaining more or less the same level until 2 days ago, of course, definitely crossed the red and black lines. Will he remain responsive also now? This is the, I think, million dollar question. It all depends on Hezbollah's response, isn't it?
I suppose that we cannot predict that, what is going to be the response. But as I said, I think that because they don't want war now, not just Hezbollah, also the Iranians, so maybe it can be and he has to take into consideration many, issues like the influence on Lebanon, what is going to happen to his own organization, etc., etc. And if a very important one, and the Chuck is going to talk about it later, is about the American involvement. They wouldn't like that there will be an American involvement in such a war. So all of this leads us to understand that maybe it can be contained. But I must say two things about what Nasrallah feels, and maybe you will think it contrasts, but it's not. On one side, they feel very confident till now, and I think that the self-confidence of Hezbollah is very high because the fact that they can continue with this war of attrition, and that they succeed in causing casualties. But in Israel, and the big achievement of Hezbollah is the fact that we evacuated 60,000 people from the communities very adjacent to the border, and they see as their own gain. But on the other side, I think that Nasrallah is frustrated because the fact that Israel, that the IDF succeed in eliminating so many of his activists. Most of them are military activists, and all of them actually, and some of them are very high-ranked, let's say, officials, activists in this terror army. So this causes him frustration because he cannot stop it. And I think that this last, the attacks on Saturday that caused the killing of these children was part of his trial to retaliate more heavily and to stop these trials of Israel to eliminate his activists. But as we see today, it didn't succeed because this morning there was also an Israeli attack, and I don't know yet the exact results, but I suppose that it was the results are not so good for Nasrallah, because in 90% of the attacks, the IDF with its very accurate missiles succeed to eliminate these activists.
Orna, thank you so much. I think the next hours will tell us a lot more on what's about to happen. Chuck, we move now to you. What are the voices that you're hearing from the United States, from Washington, in the past 48 hours. How are they reacting to what has been going on, Republicans and Democrats?
Well, I think there's, of course, a clear sense that what Hezbollah did cross the line, reprehensible attack on school kids. At the same time, I think there's a very, very clear message out of Washington, which is don't escalate to Israel. Or if you're going to respond a little bit stronger, we understand that, but don't go beyond the type of thing that we've seen in the past. We don't want what could become, as Orna was saying, a multi-front and even regional war. Washington is totally focused at the moment on one issue, and that's the elections. And another war in the Middle East will be a distraction from that.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are in the same line regarding what should Israel do regarding Lebanon? And the next question will be, of course, regarding Gaza, which I'm not sure they are in the same line, but you know better.
I haven't seen statements by Harris yet about this. And the statements that we have are from the administration. I think to get to what was going to be your next question is they're not quite in lockstep when it comes to the Palestinian issue. Harris, for the last few months, maybe even since the beginning of the war, has taken a more critical approach towards Palestinian suffering. Her statements have emphasized that side of events far more than Biden's. Now, it's not to say she said all the right things about Israel's security and supporting it, and Hamas has to be defeated, etc. But if in Biden's statements, most of the emphasis is on Israel's right to defend itself and the need to destroy Hamas, but also, of course, a mention of Palestinian suffering, in Harris's statements, the emphasis is, at least the weight that's given to the two issues, is reversed. I think we will probably see on what's happening in Lebanon that they'll be closer in lockstep. But I think there's an American position, and it won't matter at the moment if it's Democrats or Republicans. No one in the U.S. wants to see an escalation in the north.
And by the way, Netanyahu's last visit in the U.S. last week, he met also, of course, Donald Trump. In the beginning of the meeting, he said, he was quoting saying, "Now comes the best part." Netanyahu is betting on Donald Trump's victory on the 5th of November in the U.S. But also Donald Trump emphasized the fact that the war should end. So how do you see the next? And it's hard to plan, of course, and hard to think forward even 24 hours from now. But the next weeks, months, the campaign in the U.S., Israel and Lebanon, Israel and Gaza, challenges are adding up more and more. Where do you think? What do you think Israel should do now with regards to the relations with the U.S.? Where there's also, of course, the issue of the armaments policy. What is your position regarding this?
Israel's relationship with the United States is an existential one. I think that somehow we'll get through the problems with Iran, we'll get through Hezbollah, somehow we'll find a way to deal with the Palestinian issue. We'll get through it all. Won't be easy, we'll do it. The one thing that keeps me up at night that I'm really worried about and that I think that's really existential is the relationship with the United States, because we need the U.S. for everything. For dealing with Iran, Hezbollah. We thought in recent years that the only area where we might need direct American support was if Iran went nuclear and if there was a nuclear Mideast or a Mideast with multiple nuclear powers. It turned out that even Hamas, which we had poo-pooed as being the weakest player, let alone Hezbollah, which is infinitely stronger, they had advanced to the point where, since they surprised us on October 7th, we actually even needed American support in this limited scenario. And President Biden responded by sending a couple of aircraft carriers and other things to deter the Iranians and Hezbollah. So again, the relationship is critical. When the U.S. sneezes, I think we get a cold or even a very severe disease. And there are changes in the United States. We're not the only kid on the American political bloc anymore. There is a growing Muslim population, a growing pro-Palestinian population. The progressive left has basically become anti-Israel. There's a growing isolationist right on the Republican side. And if in years past, Israel was invoked in presidential campaigns as a way of eliciting applause and rah-rah, today it's very different. Israel has become a divisive issue, partly because of our own fault, because Mr. Netanyahu has played now, well, repeatedly the second visit to Congress, second address to Congress, which was designed largely to collaborate with the Republicans in the attempt to drive a wedge between Israel and the Democrats. We can't afford to be a partisan issue. One of the secrets to the U.S.-Israeli relationship was that it was always bipartisan. So we must go back to bipartisanship. I think Israel has to always align its policies to the extent we possibly can, even when it means swallowing very hard, to that of the United States, because we need the U.S. so much. And in the end, the one really difficult issue or problematic one is the Palestinian issue. There are some differences about how to handle Iran, for example, or how to handle Hezbollah, but there are differences of how, not of what. Israel's image in the U.S. has been hurt by various, let's say, questions in the U.S. whether we're the vibrant democracy that we were always believed to be, whether we really do share the same values. But all of that is very secondary. The real problem is the Palestinian one. If we could somehow eliminate that issue, the relationship would be fabulous. We'd put everything else aside. Now, the Palestinian issue is the wedge issue in Israel, of course. But even people who take the more right-wing approach, I think, or support settlements, etc., I think should do it in a way which minimizes friction with the United States. And I think certainly this government, but not only this one, some of the earlier right-wing governments of recent years have taken a different approach and in many cases have done everything they could to maximize the friction.
Chuck, last question, because we talked about Lebanon, we talked about the US. We didn't mention at all the hostage deal. And I think we cannot end a podcast like this without mentioning what is, and it may be a question to the both of you, and with this we will end this podcast. How close are we, if at all, to a hostage deal? Chuck and then Orna.
Simple answer is I have no idea. We've seen the ups and downs for the last 10 months. We thought that we were very close this time. Prime Minister Netanyahu put forward his own proposal something like 2 months ago, which then became the basis for the American proposal. And things seem to be going forward quickly. And now it looked once again when the Prime Minister visited Washington that he was going to put the final touches on the deal. Some people were even hoping that he would take advantage of the congressional platform, the meeting with the president, to announce the deal, or at least a breakthrough to the deal. And it turned out that that was not the case, and he has added new Israeli demands recently that many of the Israeli negotiators seem to believe are actually obstacles, maybe intentional obstacles to the deal, because many people in Israel believe that the prime minister really wants to keep the low-level conflict in Gaza going, because it means that there are no elections, there's no commission of national inquiry.
Yeah, for political reasons.
Personal survival, exactly. And at the moment, it seems that the hopes for a breakthrough have been postponed once again.
Further away from any solution. Orna, how will this affect Nasrallah? The fact that we're going further and further away from a deal.
Nasrallah creates a linkage, a very obvious linkage between what's happening in Gaza and the Northern Front. And he says, when it's finished in Gaza, it's going to finish his attack on the north. So, and we cannot have some bypass of this linkage, as I see. Although just if we have a war in the north, maybe something will be changed. But if we continue like this, I think that we cannot avoid this linkage. So I think that we have reached to the point that we have to go to this hostage deal and finish with it. I think that it's also the need of Sinwar, because he knows that the main gain that he can show to his people is the coming back of these prisoners that are in the hands of Israel. And this is really what he wants, to survive and to have these prisoners. I think that we achieved a lot in Gaza, but our main threat comes from the Shiite axis, the evil Shiite axis, and we have to change our priorities and come to deal with the North. Along the Gaza war, the North was a second priority. And I think that we have to conclude this deal, even though maybe we lose some, and we wouldn't have our total victory, but we have to be more realistic and go to deal with the threats from Iran and the Shiite axis.
No doubt about it. Yes, it remains in the hands of one man and one man only. If he wants to reach a deal or not, it really depends on how he looks at his political survival. I think it has a lot to do with it. Thank you so much, Orna Mizrahi and Chuck Freilich, for joining me and for elaborating on probably the most burning issue in Israel at the moment. Thank you, and thank you to our audience. See you next show. Bye-bye.